I am Rachel Morrison, 34 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed my older brother Michael would do anything to protect me and my children. I never imagined he would fabricate lies about drug addiction, manipulate our entire family, and weaponize the legal system to steal my babies from me. His words still haunt me every sleepless night. Those kids deserve better than a junkie mother, all because I refused to let him control my life after my divorce. That morning when Child Protective Services knocked on my door, I was making pancakes for my 7-year-old daughter Emma and 5-year-old son Tyler, completely unaware that my own brother had already spent weeks poisoning minds against me. If you are watching this, please let me know where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up in the rolling hills of Vermont, Michael and I were raised in what outsiders would call an idyllic childhood. Our farmhouse sat on 12 acres of land that our grandfather had purchased in the 1940s, complete with a red barn that housed our collection of rescue animals and vegetable gardens that fed us through harsh New England winters. Our mother, Catherine, was a gentle soul who taught third grade at the local elementary school for 37 years. She had this way of making every child feel special, whether it was through handwritten notes of encouragement or staying after school to help struggling readers. Our father, Robert, worked as a carpenter, building custom cabinets and furniture that families would treasure for generations. His workshop in the basement always smelled of sawdust and wood stain, and he would spend hours teaching us how to sand properly and measure twice before cutting. Michael, being 4 years older than me, naturally assumed the role of protective big brother. When I was 6 and he was 10, he chased off a neighborhood dog that had cornered me near the creek behind our house. When I struggled with mathematics in 4th grade, he spent his Saturday afternoons helping me understand long division, never once making me feel stupid for needing extra help. During my awkward middle school years, when other kids teased me about my second-hand clothes and thick glasses, Michael would walk me to class and somehow make the bullying stop without ever raising his voice or throwing a punch. He had this natural authority, this way of commanding respect that I envied and admired in equal measure. Our parents worked hard to instill values of honesty, community service, and family loyalty in both of us. Sunday dinners were sacred in our household, with extended family members often joining us around the large oak table that Dad had built when I was still in diapers. Aunts, uncles, and cousins would fill our house with laughter and conversation that lasted well into the evening. Family takes care of family, Mom would always say when clearing dishes after these gatherings. We might not have much money, but we have each other, and that's worth more than gold. These words became the foundation of how I understood the world, how I believed relationships should function, and how I would later raise my own children. Michael excelled academically throughout high school, earning a full scholarship to the University of Vermont, where he studied business administration. I remember how proud our parents were the day his acceptance letter arrived, Mom crying tears of joy, while Dad called every relative to share the news. Michael had always been ambitious, talking about starting his own company and building wealth that would secure our family's future for generations. He worked summers at a local accounting firm, saving every penny and learning about investments and financial planning from professionals who recognized his sharp mind and determined work ethic. Meanwhile, I followed a different path, one that frustrated Michael even during our teenage years. I was drawn to creative pursuits, spending hours writing poetry and short stories, painting watercolors of the mountain landscape surrounding our town, and playing guitar on the front porch during summer evenings. My grades were solid but unremarkable, and I showed little interest in Michael's passionate discussions about business strategies or market trends. "You need to think about your future more seriously," Rachel he would tell me during my junior year of high school. "Art is a nice hobby, but it won't pay the bills or take care of you when you're older." After graduating, I enrolled at the local community college to study early childhood education, a decision that Michael openly criticized. "You could do so much more with your life," he said during one particularly tense family dinner. "Teaching pays nothing, and you'll never build any real security." Our parents defended my choice, pointing out that Mom had found deep fulfillment in her teaching career, but Michael remained unconvinced that I was making wise decisions about my future. During my second year of college, I met David Harrison at a coffee shop near campus, where I worked part-time to help pay for textbooks and supplies. David was 2 years older, studying mechanical engineering, with kind brown eyes and a gentle sense of humor that made even the most stressful days feel manageable. He would come in every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, always ordering the same thing, black coffee and a blueberry muffin, always leaving a generous tip even though I could tell money was tight for him too. Our relationship developed slowly, built on long conversations about books, shared dreams of traveling the world someday, and comfortable silences while we studied together at corner tables. Michael's reaction to David was immediately skeptical, though he hid his disapproval behind polite questions and surface-level friendliness. "What are his long-term career prospects?" Michael asked after their first meeting. "Engineering is competitive, and community college guys don't always have the connections needed to succeed in that field." When I pointed out that David was working full-time while attending school and maintaining excellent grades, Michael shrugged. "Hard work is good, but it's not everything. Success requires strategic thinking and networking, not just effort." Despite Michael's reservations, David and I married 3 years later in a simple ceremony at our local church, with wild flowers from Mom's garden serving as decorations and Dad building a beautiful wooden archway under which we exchanged vows. The reception was held in our backyard, with neighbors contributing homemade dishes and Michael's college friends mixing with our extended family in a celebration that felt authentic and joyful. Michael gave a speech that night that seemed supportive on the surface, wishing us happiness while subtly emphasizing the challenges young couples face when starting out with limited resources. David found steady employment with a local manufacturing company, while I completed my education degree and began teaching at the same elementary school where Mom had spent her career. Our early married years were modest but happy, living in a small apartment above the town bakery, saving carefully for a down payment on our own home. I loved teaching second grade, watching children discover the magic of reading and seeing their confidence grow as they mastered new skills. David would often help me prepare classroom decorations and learning materials, his engineering mind finding creative solutions to educational challenges. When Emma was born, our joy was complete. She arrived 3 weeks early on a snowy February morning, tiny but healthy, with David's brown eyes and what would eventually become my curly dark hair. Michael seemed genuinely happy about becoming an uncle, bringing thoughtful gifts and spending hours holding his niece during family gatherings. For a brief period, I thought perhaps his earlier skepticism about my choices had been replaced by acceptance and support. 2 years later, Tyler joined our family, a chubby, cheerful baby who rarely cried and seemed fascinated by everything around him. David had received a promotion at work, and we had managed to purchase a modest 3-bedroom house on the outskirts of town, complete with a large backyard where the children could play safely. Our life felt stable and purposeful, filled with bedtime stories, weekend visits to our parents' farm, and the ordinary magic of watching our children discover the world. Michael, meanwhile, had graduated from university and moved to Boston, where he worked for a prestigious consulting firm. His salary was substantial, especially compared to our teaching and manufacturing incomes, and he frequently reminded us of the lifestyle differences our career choices had created. During holiday visits, he would arrive in expensive suits, driving luxury cars that cost more than David and I made in an entire year. "I'm doing well," he would say with a smile that somehow managed to be both generous and condescending. Really well. The first cracks in our relationship appeared when Emma started school. I had always been protective of my children, perhaps overly so, ensuring they ate organic foods, limiting their screen time, and carefully selecting books and activities that would nurture their developing minds. Michael criticized these choices as helicopter parenting, arguing that I was sheltering them from reality and preventing them from developing independence. "You can't protect them from everything, Rachel," he said, during one particularly heated discussion. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The real world isn't as gentle as your little bubble. When I explained my philosophy about child development and the importance of creating secure attachments during early childhood, Michael would roll his eyes. "You read too many parenting books," he would say dismissively. "Kids need structure and discipline, not constant coddling. Look at how we were raised, and we turned out fine." These conversations always left me feeling criticized and misunderstood, as if my dedication to my children was somehow a character flaw rather than a strength. The criticism extended to our financial decisions as well. Michael couldn't understand why David and I chose to live modestly, saving money for the children's education rather than upgrading our lifestyle. "You could be doing so much better," he would tell me during private conversations. "David's job has no real growth potential, and teaching will never provide financial security. You're limiting your family's opportunities because you're afraid to take risks." When I tried to explain that happiness and security meant different things to different people, that we were content with our choices and proud of the life we had built together, Michael would become frustrated. "Contentment is just another word for giving up," he would argue. "You have so much potential, Rachel, but you're wasting it on this small-town mentality. Your children deserve better opportunities than you're providing." These conversations became increasingly frequent and aggressive as the years passed. Michael seemed to view our lifestyle choices as personal failures, as if our happiness somehow diminished his own success. He would point out examples of other families who had taken greater financial risks and achieved higher income levels, suggesting that our careful approach to money management was actually holding us back from achieving our full potential. The breaking point in our marriage came during Emma's 6th year, though the problems had been building for months before I fully recognized them. David had been coming home later from work, claiming overtime projects that never seemed to result in additional income. He became distant and distracted during family dinners, often staring at his phone instead of engaging with the children's stories about school and friends. When I asked about his mood changes, he would insist everything was fine, that work was just stressful and he needed space to decompress. I discovered the truth on a Thursday evening in October while looking for our tax documents in David's desk drawer. Hidden beneath insurance papers and old bank statements, I found printed emails and text message screenshots that revealed David's affair with a coworker named Jennifer Walsh. The messages detailed a relationship that had been ongoing for 8 months, filled with romantic declarations and plans for a future together that obviously didn't include me and the children. The confrontation that followed was devastating and surreal. David initially denied everything, then minimized the relationship and finally admitted to the affair while blaming our marriage for his choices. "We've grown apart, Rachel," he said, as if that somehow justified his betrayal. "You're so focused on the kids and your teaching that there's no room for us anymore. Jennifer understands me in ways you don't." I tried desperately to save our marriage, suggesting counseling and begging David to consider the impact of divorce on Emma and Tyler. For several weeks, he seemed willing to work on our relationship, ending the affair and agreeing to attend therapy sessions. But the damage had been done, and David's heart was no longer invested in rebuilding what we had lost. The divorce proceedings began 6 months later, with David moving in with Jennifer and starting the life he had been planning secretly while still living in our home. The custody arrangements were initially fair and reasonable. David would have the children every other weekend and 1 evening per week, while I maintained primary custody and continued living in our family home. The financial settlement was modest, with David agreeing to pay child support and continue covering the children's health insurance through his employer. It wasn't the life I had envisioned, but it felt manageable, and most importantly, it prioritized Emma and Tyler's stability during an already difficult transition. Michael's reaction to my divorce was complicated and troubling. On the surface, he offered support and sympathy, helping me navigate the legal paperwork and even contributing money toward attorney fees. But underneath his apparent concern, I sensed judgment and disappointment, as if my failed marriage confirmed his long-held beliefs about my poor decision-making abilities. "I hate to say I told you so," he said during one late-night phone conversation, but David never seemed like the type who could provide long-term stability. "Maybe this is an opportunity for you to make better choices moving forward." The comments stung because they ignored the reality of what had happened. David's affair wasn't a result of my poor judgment, but rather his own choices and character flaws that had been carefully hidden during our courtship and early marriage years. Michael's response felt like victim blaming disguised as brotherly concern, and it marked the beginning of a pattern that would eventually destroy our relationship completely. As I adjusted to single motherhood, Michael became increasingly involved in offering unsolicited advice about my parenting, my finances, and my future plans. He would drop by unannounced, claiming to check on the children while actually scrutinizing my housekeeping, my grocery choices, and my daily routines. "The kids seem tired," he would comment after observing Emma and Tyler during their normal evening wind-down time. Are you sure you're maintaining proper bedtime schedules? When I assured him that both children were thriving academically and socially, that their pediatrician was pleased with their development, and that their teachers reported no concerns about behavior or attention, Michael would nod skeptically. Children are good at hiding problems, he would say. Sometimes outside observers can see things that parents miss because they're too close to the situation. These observations felt intrusive and undermining, but I attributed them to Michael's natural tendency toward control and his genuine concern for his niece and nephew. I never imagined that his criticism was actually the beginning of a calculated campaign to build a case against my fitness as a mother, that every comment and observation was being mentally catalogued for future use against me. The first major incident occurred during a family barbecue at our parents' house in late spring. Emma and Tyler were playing in the backyard with their cousins while the adults prepared food and caught up on recent events. I had brought a bottle of wine to share with dinner, something I occasionally enjoyed in moderation during social gatherings. After helping Mom set the table and ensuring the children had everything they needed, I poured myself a glass of wine and joined the conversation on the back porch. Michael immediately focused on my wine consumption, making pointed comments about drinking around children and questioning whether it was appropriate for a single mother to be consuming alcohol during family events. "I'm not judging," he said in a tone that suggested the opposite, "but appearances matter, especially now that you're dealing with custody arrangements. David could use something like this against you if he wanted to." The suggestion was absurd and hurtful. I was drinking one glass of wine with dinner, the same thing most adults do during social gatherings, and I had never had any issues with alcohol consumption. My children were safe and supervised, playing happily with their cousins while surrounded by loving family members. Michael's comment felt like an attack disguised as protection, and it left me feeling defensive and confused about his motivations. Later that evening, after the children and I had returned home, Michael called with what he claimed was clarification about his earlier comments. "I didn't mean to upset you," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I'm just concerned about how things might look to outsiders. Single mothers are held to different standards, fair or not, and you need to be extra careful about your choices." When I pointed out that his own girlfriend Sarah had consumed wine during the same gathering without receiving any criticism, Michael's response was telling. "Sarah doesn't have children depending on her," he said. "And she's not involved in a custody situation where every decision could be scrutinized. Your circumstances are different, Rachel, and you need to start thinking more strategically about how your behavior affects your family." This conversation marked a turning point in our relationship. For the first time, I began to recognize that Michael's concern was actually judgment and control, that his advice was designed to make me feel inadequate rather than supported. His comments about strategic thinking and public perception suggested that he viewed my life as a series of chess moves rather than authentic choices made in my children's best interests. Over the following months, Michael's criticism became more frequent and more pointed. He questioned my decision to allow the children to spend time with David's parents, suggesting that maintaining relationships with my ex-husband's family was somehow disloyal or inappropriate. He criticized my choice to continue teaching rather than pursuing a higher-paying career, arguing that my limited income was preventing Emma and Tyler from accessing better opportunities. He even questioned my decision to keep our family dog, a gentle golden retriever named Buddy, claiming that pet ownership was an unnecessary expense and responsibility for a single mother. Each criticism felt like a small wound, and the cumulative effect was devastating to my confidence and self-worth. Michael had a way of framing his attacks as loving concern, making it difficult to reject his input without seeming defensive or ungrateful. "I only want what's best for you and the kids," he would say after delivering particularly harsh assessments of my choices. "Someone needs to tell you the truth, even if it's hard to hear." The truth, as I was beginning to understand, was that Michael had never accepted my independence or my right to make decisions different from his recommendations. My divorce had created an opportunity for him to assert more control over my life, and he was systematically working to undermine my confidence while positioning himself as the voice of reason and wisdom in our family. The situation escalated dramatically during Tyler's 5th birthday party, an event that I had planned carefully to create happy memories despite the challenges of our new family structure. I had invited both sides of the family, including David and Jennifer, hoping to demonstrate to the children that adult disagreements didn't have to ruin special occasions. The party was held at a local park with playground equipment, picnic tables, and plenty of space for children to run and play safely. Everything went smoothly until the afternoon, when several parents began leaving and I was cleaning up party supplies while keeping an eye on Emma and Tyler as they played on the swings with their remaining friends. I had consumed half a beer with lunch, something so normal and unremarkable that I barely thought about it. Michael, however, seized on this as evidence of irresponsible behavior, loudly expressing concern about my drinking around children and questioning my ability to supervise them properly while under the influence of alcohol. The scene he created was humiliating and completely disproportionate to the situation. Other parents stared as Michael lectured me about setting proper examples and maintaining appropriate boundaries. David and Jennifer exchanged glances that suggested they were filing away this information for potential future use. My own children looked confused and upset by their uncle's angry tone and public criticism of their mother. That evening, after putting Emma and Tyler to bed and fielding questions about why Uncle Michael had been so angry, I called our parents to discuss what had happened. Dad was furious about Michael's behavior, calling it inappropriate and cruel, while Mom seemed torn between defending me and maintaining peace between her children. Michael means well, she said carefully, but he definitely crossed a line today. You're a wonderful mother, Rachel, and no one should be questioning your dedication to those children. When I spoke with Michael directly the next day, hoping to address the incident and establish clearer boundaries about his involvement in my parenting decisions, his response was chilling in its calculated precision. I'm documenting everything, Rachel, he said calmly. Every poor decision, every questionable choice, every time you put those children at risk through your selfishness and irresponsibility, those kids deserve better than what you're providing, and if you can't see that, then maybe someone else needs to step in and protect them. The threat was clear, though I didn't fully understand its implications at the time. Michael was building a case against me, collecting ammunition for a battle I didn't know we were fighting. His criticism wasn't random or emotional, but strategic and purposeful, designed to establish a pattern that could be used to challenge my fitness as a mother. Over the following weeks, I began to notice other troubling changes in Michael's behavior. He would arrive at my house unannounced, claiming to be checking on the children, while actually inspecting my housekeeping, my refrigerator contents, and my daily routines. He would engage Emma and Tyler in seemingly innocent conversations about their daily lives, asking leading questions about bedtime schedules, meal choices, and whether Mommy ever seemed sad or tired or angry. The children, who had always adored their uncle, began reporting these conversations to me with growing confusion. Uncle Michael asked if you ever take medicine that makes you sleepy, Emma told me one evening after Michael's latest visit. And he wanted to know if you ever leave us alone or have friends over when we're supposed to be sleeping. These questions were clearly designed to elicit responses that could be twisted into evidence of neglect or inappropriate behavior. Michael was essentially interrogating my children, using their trust and innocence to gather information that could be used against me. The realization was horrifying and heartbreaking, marking the moment when I finally understood that my brother viewed my children not as beloved niece and nephew, but as weapons in a war I hadn't realized we were fighting. The final straw came during a weekend when Emma had come down with a stomach virus that left her feverish and nauseous. I had kept both children home from their planned visit to David's house, prioritizing Emma's health and recovery over maintaining the regular custody schedule. This was a reasonable and responsible decision that any caring parent would make, and David had agreed completely when I called to explain the situation. Michael, however, arrived at my house that Sunday afternoon in a state of apparent crisis, demanding to see the children and expressing concern about Emma's condition. When I explained that she was resting and recovering well but still contagious, he insisted on entering the house to assess the situation himself. You can't just keep the kids isolated, he argued. They need fresh air and social interaction, even when they're not feeling perfect. His behavior was so aggressive and unreasonable that I finally stood my ground, refusing to allow him inside and asking him to leave until Emma was completely recovered. Michael's response was explosive and revealing, dropping all pretense of concern and revealing the anger and control issues that had been building for months. "You're destroying those children," he screamed loud enough for neighbors to hear. "Keeping them locked up like prisoners, preventing them from seeing their family, making them sicker by sheltering them from everything." When I calmly explained that Emma had a fever and was following doctor's orders to rest and avoid spreading illness to others, Michael's accusations became even more extreme and irrational. "You're probably making her sick on purpose," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "Creating drama and emergencies so you can play the martyr and keep everyone under your control." The accusation was so absurd and cruel that I felt like I had been physically struck. To suggest that I would deliberately harm my own child for attention or control was beyond comprehension, yet Michael delivered the words with conviction and certainty that suggested he actually believed what he was saying. That night, after Michael had left and the children were safely asleep, I called Elaine Crawford, my closest friend since college and the one person I trusted completely to give me honest perspective about the situation. Elaine was a family attorney who specialized in custody cases, and her reaction to my description of Michael's behavior was immediate and alarming. "Rachel, this sounds like he's building a case to challenge your custody," she said without hesitation. "The questions about your drinking, the surprise visits, the criticism of your parenting choices, even the accusations about making Emma sick, these are all tactics used to establish unfitness claims. You need to start documenting everything immediately and prepare for the possibility that he's planning to involve Child Protective Services." The suggestion seemed impossible and paranoid, but Elaine's expertise and concern forced me to consider possibilities I had never imagined. Could my own brother really be planning to use the legal system against me? Was his apparent concern for Emma and Tyler actually part of a calculated strategy to remove them from my care? As I lay awake that night, replaying months of interactions and conversations with new understanding, the pieces began forming a terrifying picture. Michael's criticism hadn't been random or emotional, but purposeful and strategic. His questions to the children weren't innocent curiosity, but information gathering designed to build a case against me. His threats about documentation and intervention weren't empty anger, but actual plans being put into motion. The next morning, I began keeping detailed records of every interaction with Michael, every conversation with the children about his visits, and every decision I made regarding their care and welfare. I also started researching my legal rights and options, determined to protect my family from whatever storm was approaching. I had no idea how soon that storm would arrive, or how devastating its impact would be on everything I held dear. 3 weeks after Michael's explosive confrontation at my home, I received a phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning in September, and I was preparing breakfast for Emma and Tyler before school when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. The woman on the other end identified herself as Karen Phillips from the Department of Children and Family Services, speaking in the practiced tone of someone who delivered difficult news regularly. "Miss Morrison, we've received a report regarding concerns about your children's welfare," she said, her words hitting me like ice water. "I need to schedule a home visit to conduct an assessment. Are you available this afternoon?" The world seemed to tilt sideways as I processed what she was saying. Someone had called Child Protective Services about me. Someone had made formal allegations serious enough to trigger an investigation into my fitness as a mother. My hands shook as I gripped the phone, trying to maintain composure while Emma and Tyler finished their cereal at the kitchen table, blissfully unaware that our lives were about to be turned upside down. "What kind of concerns?" I managed to ask, though part of me already knew the answer. "I can't discuss specifics over the phone," Karen replied professionally. "But the allegations involve substance abuse and potential neglect. I'll need to see the children, inspect your home, and conduct interviews with both you and them. Can we schedule this for 2 o'clock today?" After agreeing to the appointment and ending the call, I sat in my kitchen staring at my children as they prepared for school, their innocent chatter about spelling tests and playground games creating a surreal contrast to the nightmare that was beginning to unfold. How could anyone believe I was abusing drugs or neglecting my babies? Emma and Tyler were healthy, happy, well-adjusted children who excelled in school and maintained strong relationships with friends and family. They were fed nutritious meals, lived in a clean and safe home, and received consistent medical and dental care. The allegations were not just false but absurd. Yet as I dropped the children off at school and returned home to prepare for the caseworker's visit, Michael's recent behavior took on a sinister new meaning. His documentation threats, his strategic criticism, his leading questions to Emma and Tyler, everything suddenly made perfect sense. My own brother had called Child Protective Services with fabricated allegations designed to remove my children from my care. The realization was devastating in ways I couldn't have imagined. This wasn't just betrayal by a family member, but an attack on the most fundamental relationship in my life. Michael was using the power of the state to challenge my role as a mother, weaponizing government agencies that were designed to protect children against the very person who loved them most. I spent the hours before Karen's arrival cleaning my already spotless house, organizing already organized closets, and gathering documentation that proved my competence as a parent. Medical records showing regular checkups and vaccinations, school reports demonstrating academic success and positive behavior, photographs of happy family activities, anything that could counteract whatever lies Michael had told to justify this investigation. Karen Phillips arrived precisely at 2 o'clock, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and tired eyes that suggested she had seen too much sadness in her career. She was professional but not unkind, explaining the process while conducting a thorough inspection of my home. She examined the children's bedrooms, checked the contents of my refrigerator and medicine cabinet, and asked detailed questions about daily routines, disciplinary methods, and support systems. The person who filed the report expressed concerns about drug use, she said carefully, watching my reaction. They claimed to have witnessed erratic behavior, mood swings, and evidence of substance abuse in your home. They also suggested that the children are frequently left unsupervised and that you've become increasingly unstable since your divorce. Each allegation felt like a physical blow, not just because they were false, but because I could trace their origins to specific incidents that Michael had twisted beyond recognition. My glass of wine at the family barbecue had become evidence of alcohol abuse. My decision to keep sick Emma home from visiting her father had become proof of erratic behavior. My normal emotional responses to a difficult divorce had been reframed as dangerous instability. I'd like to conduct brief interviews with Emma and Tyler when they return from school, Karen continued, just to get their perspective on daily life and ensure they feel safe and cared for. The thought of my children being questioned about their home life was heartbreaking, but I understood that cooperation was essential. I signed the necessary forms and waited anxiously for 3:30, when Emma and Tyler would return from school to find their world forever changed by their uncle's calculated cruelty. When the children arrived home, Karen explained her presence in gentle terms, describing herself as someone who wanted to make sure all families were happy and healthy. Emma, ever the responsible older sister, answered questions politely while Tyler clung to my side, sensing tension he couldn't understand. The interview lasted 30 minutes, during which Karen asked about bedtimes, meals rules, and whether the children ever felt scared or unsafe. Both Emma and Tyler spoke positively about their lives, describing our home as a place where they felt loved and secure. They talked about bedtime stories, weekend adventures, and the consistency of our daily routines. When Karen asked if Mommy ever acted strange or took medicine that made her sleepy, both children looked confused by the questions and answered honestly that they had never observed anything unusual. After Karen left, promising to complete her report within 2 weeks, I sat down with Emma and Tyler to address their obvious confusion about the visit. I explained in age-appropriate terms that sometimes grown-ups have disagreements about what's best for children, and that Karen's job was to make sure all kids were being taken care of properly. I assured them that they had done nothing wrong and that our family was strong and safe. That evening, after the children were asleep, I called Elaine to report what had happened and seek her legal advice. Her response was immediate and urgent. I needed to hire an attorney specializing in family defense cases, document everything related to the investigation, and prepare for the possibility that this was just the beginning of a much larger legal battle. CPS investigations can move quickly, Elaine warned. If Michael has been planning this systematically, he may have additional strategies already in motion. You need to assume the worst-case scenario and build the strongest possible defense. The next morning, I contacted Daniel Rodriguez, an attorney recommended by Elaine who specialized in defending parents against false allegations. Daniel was a soft-spoken man in his 50s, with decades of experience navigating the complex intersection of family law and child protection services. His office was filled with thank you letters from grateful families, testimonials to his success in protecting innocent parents from malicious accusations. These cases are more common than people realize, Daniel explained during our initial consultation. Disgruntled family members, vindictive ex-spouses, neighborhood disputes, they can all lead to false reports that devastate innocent families. The key is building an overwhelming case that demonstrates not just your innocence, but the malicious intent behind the allegations. Daniel immediately began gathering evidence to support my defense, including character references from colleagues, friends, and Emma and Tyler's teachers. He requested copies of all medical records, school reports, and any documentation that could demonstrate my competence and dedication as a mother. Most importantly, he began building a timeline of Michael's escalating behavior, establishing a clear pattern of harassment and intimidation that led directly to the false report. Meanwhile, the investigation continued its invasive course through our lives. Karen conducted follow-up interviews with the children's teachers, their pediatrician, and several neighbors. She reviewed my employment records and spoke with my supervisor about my job performance and reliability. Every aspect of my life was scrutinized and evaluated by strangers who held the power to tear my family apart based on lies told by someone who was supposed to love and protect us. The teachers at Emma and Tyler's school were uniformly supportive, describing both children as well-adjusted, academically successful, and clearly loved. Their pediatrician, Dr. Sarah Chen, provided detailed records showing consistent care and normal development, along with a strong character reference that praised my attentiveness and advocacy for my children's health needs. Even my neighbors, when interviewed, spoke positively about our family and expressed surprise at the allegations. 2 weeks after the initial visit, Karen returned to deliver her preliminary findings. She sat in my living room, the same space where she had first questioned my fitness as a mother, and delivered words that felt like salvation and warning combined. Based on my investigation, I found no evidence to support the allegations of substance abuse or neglect, she said, her expression reflecting both relief and concern. Your children are clearly well cared for, your home is appropriate, and all professionals involved in their lives speak highly of your parenting. However, I am concerned about the source of these allegations and the potential for ongoing family conflict. The formal case was being closed, but Karen's warning proved prophetic. Within days of receiving official notification that the investigation had been dismissed, Michael launched his next attack through a different avenue, a formal petition for emergency custody filed in family court. The legal documents, served to me by a sheriff's deputy on a Friday afternoon while Emma and Tyler played in our backyard, alleged that I posed an immediate danger to my children due to drug addiction, mental instability, and increasingly erratic behavior. Michael was requesting temporary custody pending a full hearing, claiming that my children were at risk of serious harm if they remained in my care. Reading the petition felt like being repeatedly punched in the stomach. Every private struggle, every normal human emotion, every ordinary parenting decision had been twisted into evidence of my unfitness. Michael claimed that I had been drinking excessively since my divorce, that I frequently left the children unsupervised, that I had verbally abused them during disciplinary moments, and that I had been taking prescription medications that impaired my judgment and ability to care for them safely. Most devastatingly, the petition included sworn statements from supposed witnesses to my alleged misconduct. Michael had somehow convinced 2 neighbors, Patricia Webb and Gregory Martinez, to sign affidavits supporting his claims. Patricia claimed to have seen me stumbling around my yard while the children played unsupervised, suggesting intoxication during afternoon hours. Gregory alleged that he had heard me screaming at Emma and Tyler through open windows, using profanity and threatening language that frightened him enough to consider calling authorities. Both allegations were completely fabricated, yet they appeared in official legal documents with sworn statements and notarized signatures. I tried to understand how Michael could have convinced these neighbors to lie on his behalf, what he could have offered or threatened to secure their cooperation in destroying my family. Daniel Rodriguez reviewed the custody petition with growing anger, recognizing the coordinated nature of the attack and the sophisticated legal strategy behind it. "This isn't random vindictiveness," he explained. "Your brother has been working with an attorney for months, building this case systematically and recruiting allies to support his version of events. This level of planning suggests he's been committed to this course of action for much longer than you realized." The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following Wednesday, giving us only 5 days to prepare a defense against allegations that had been months in the making. Daniel immediately filed counter-motions requesting disclosure of Michael's evidence, questioning the credibility of his witnesses, and presenting our own documentation of his harassment and intimidation. Most importantly, Daniel advised me to request a guardian ad litem for Emma and Tyler, an independent attorney whose sole responsibility would be to advocate for the children's best interests rather than either parent's preferences. "If your brother is willing to lie this extensively, we need someone objective to evaluate what's really happening here," he explained. The weekend before the hearing was the longest of my life. I tried to maintain normal routines for Emma and Tyler, while struggling with overwhelming anxiety about the possibility of losing them. They could sense my distress despite my efforts to hide it, asking repeated questions about why I seemed sad and whether everything was going to be okay. Saturday evening, as I was tucking Tyler into bed, he looked up at me with his father's brown eyes and asked the question I had been dreading. "Mommy, are we going to have to go live with Uncle Michael?" The innocence of his question, combined with the genuine fear in his voice, broke something inside me. My 5-year-old son was worried about being taken away from the only home he had ever known, separated from the mother who had cared for him since birth, because of lies told by a man he had trusted and loved. "No, sweetheart," I whispered, stroking his hair and hoping desperately that my words would prove true. "Uncle Michael is confused about some things, but you and Emma are staying right here with me. This is your home, and I'm your mom, and nothing is going to change that." But even as I spoke those reassuring words, I knew that the legal system didn't always prioritize truth or justice. Innocent parents lost custody battles every day, destroyed by false allegations and legal technicalities that valued procedure over family bonds. Michael's wealth and connections gave him advantages I didn't possess, and his willingness to lie under oath suggested he would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Sunday brought unexpected support from an unlikely source, my ex-husband David. Despite our complicated relationship and his own role in our family's upheaval, David was horrified by Michael's actions and offered to testify on my behalf regarding my fitness as a mother. Whatever problems we had in our marriage, David told me during a tense phone conversation, "You've always been an incredible mother to Emma and Tyler. Michael's allegations are insane, and I won't let him destroy our children's lives with these lies." David's support was crucial not just for his testimony, but for what it represented. If my ex-husband, who had every reason to remain neutral or even support challenges to my custody, was willing to defend my parenting, it demonstrated the absurdity of Michael's claims to any objective observer. Monday morning brought another devastating blow, a temporary restraining order that prohibited me from taking Emma and Tyler anywhere outside our immediate neighborhood without court approval. Michael's attorney had argued that I might flee with the children to avoid the custody hearing, despite having no history of such behavior and deep roots in the community where I had lived my entire life. The restraining order felt like being trapped in a cage, unable to take my children to their usual activities, or even visit my parents without risking contempt of court charges. Emma's dance class, Tyler's library story time, our weekend visits to the farm, where they loved feeding the chickens and picking vegetables, all of these normal family activities were suddenly forbidden by judicial decree based on fabricated concerns about flight risk. Tuesday brought the most shocking revelation yet. Michael had somehow obtained temporary emergency custody of Emma and Tyler effective immediately, pending the Wednesday hearing. A sheriff's deputy arrived at my door Tuesday afternoon, with papers signed by Judge Rachel Morrison, no relation despite the shared surname, ordering me to surrender my children to their uncle's care until the court could fully evaluate the situation. The moment was surreal and traumatic beyond description. Emma and Tyler, who had just returned from school excited about upcoming Halloween preparations, suddenly found themselves being told to pack overnight bags because they would be staying with Uncle Michael for a few days. Their confusion and fear were heartbreaking, made worse by my inability to explain what was happening in terms that wouldn't terrify them further. It's just temporary, I told them while helping pack their favorite stuffed animals and bedtime books, my voice steady despite the screaming panic in my chest. Uncle Michael wants to spend some special time with you, and then you'll come home very soon. Emma, wise beyond her 7 years, sensed that something was seriously wrong. Why can't Uncle Michael visit us here like always? She asked, her voice small and worried. Why do we have to leave you, Mommy? I had no answer that wouldn't frighten her more, so I focused on practical reassurances about maintaining contact, promised phone calls every evening, and reminded her that she was a brave big sister who could help take care of Tyler during this confusing time. Michael arrived to collect the children with Sarah, his girlfriend, and a demeanor of false concern that made my skin crawl. He spoke to Emma and Tyler in gentle tones about the adventure they would have at his house, the fun activities he had planned, and how much he was looking forward to spending quality time with them. To anyone observing, he appeared to be a loving uncle graciously helping during a family crisis. But I could see the cold satisfaction in his eyes when he looked at me, the triumph of someone whose careful planning had achieved exactly the desired result. He had successfully weaponized the legal system to steal my children, and he was savoring every moment of my anguish. This is what's best for them, he said quietly while Sarah helped the children into his car. They need stability and proper care, not the chaos you've been providing. Watching my children drive away in Michael's silver Mercedes, their confused faces pressed against the back window as they waved goodbye, was the most devastating moment of my life. I stood in my driveway long after the car disappeared, unable to move or think or breathe properly, trying to comprehend how the legal system designed to protect children could be so easily manipulated to destroy families. That evening, alone in a house that felt enormous and empty without Emma and Tyler's voices and laughter, I called my parents to inform them of what had happened. Their reaction was explosive, with Dad threatening to drive to Michael's house immediately and demand the return of his grandchildren, while Mom wept openly at the realization of how completely her son had betrayed her daughter and innocent grandchildren. How could he do this? Mom asked through her tears. How could Michael destroy his own family for the sake of control and power? Those children adore you, Rachel. They belong with their mother. Dad's response was more practical and equally devastated. We're hiring the best attorney money can buy, and we're going to expose Michael's lies in court tomorrow. This madness ends now. The Wednesday hearing would determine whether my children returned home where they belonged or remained trapped in Michael's web of lies and manipulation. As I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of my suddenly silent house, I tried to prepare myself for a legal battle that would determine not just custody arrangements, but the fundamental question of whether truth and justice could prevail against wealth, planning, and the willingness to destroy innocent lives in pursuit of control. The stakes could not have been higher, and I knew that Michael would stop at nothing to ensure his victory, even if it meant permanently traumatizing the children he claimed to be protecting. Tomorrow would reveal whether the legal system could recognize the difference between genuine concern and calculated manipulation, between protecting children and stealing them from the mother who loved them more than life itself. The morning of the custody hearing arrived gray and cold, matching the dread that had settled in my chest like concrete. I dressed carefully in my most professional outfit, knowing that everything from my appearance to my posture would be scrutinized and judged. Daniel Rodriguez met me at the courthouse steps, his expression grim but determined as he reviewed our strategy one final time. Remember, this isn't just about proving your innocence, he reminded me as we walked through the imposing glass doors. We need to expose Michael's pattern of manipulation and demonstrate that his actions are harming the very children he claims to be protecting. The courtroom was smaller than I had expected, with wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that cast harsh shadows across everyone's faces. Michael sat at the plaintiff's table with his attorney, Marcus Chen, a sharp-dressed man with a reputation for aggressive litigation tactics. Sarah sat behind them in the gallery, along with Patricia Webb and Gregory Martinez, the neighbors who had provided false testimony against me. On my side of the room, my parents sat with David and Jennifer, an unlikely alliance formed by their shared disbelief at Michael's actor. Sarah Chen, Emma and Tyler's pediatrician, had taken time from her practice to testify on my behalf, as had several of my teaching colleagues and the children's school principal. Judge Morrison entered precisely at 9 o'clock, a stern-faced woman in her 60s who commanded immediate silence with her presence. She reviewed the case file briefly before calling the hearing to order, her expression revealing nothing about her initial impressions of the situation. Michael's attorney presented his case first, painting a picture of a mother spiraling into addiction and mental instability following her divorce. He called Patricia Webb to the stand, where she testified with surprising conviction about allegedly witnessing me stumbling around my yard while the children played unsupervised, claiming I appeared intoxicated during afternoon hours on multiple occasions. Under Daniel's cross-examination, however, Patricia's story began to unravel. When pressed for specific dates and times, she became vague and contradictory. When asked about her relationship with Michael, she reluctantly admitted that he had helped her son find employment at his consulting firm, a detail that hadn't been disclosed in her original affidavit. Morrison provided a job for your son just weeks before you signed this statement about his sister. Daniel asked pointedly. It wasn't connected, Patricia insisted, but her nervous glances toward Michael suggested otherwise. Gregory Martinez proved even less credible under scrutiny. His claims about hearing me scream profanities at my children fell apart when Daniel presented evidence that Gregory's hearing loss required powerful hearing aids that he frequently forgot to wear. Medical records showed that his auditory impairment made it impossible for him to have heard conversations from inside my house while standing in his own yard. The most damaging moment came when Marcus Chen called Michael to testify. My brother took the stand with practiced confidence, repeating his allegations about my drinking, my erratic behavior, and my inability to provide stable care for Emma and Tyler. He spoke with apparent emotion about his concern for his niece and nephew, describing himself as a reluctant but necessary intervention in a deteriorating situation. But Daniel's cross-examination revealed the calculated nature of Michael's campaign. Through careful questioning, he established the timeline of Michael's increasing criticism, his surprise visits, his leading questions to the children, and his threats about documentation. Most crucially, Daniel presented phone records showing that Michael had contacted CPS within hours of our confrontation about Emma's illness, proving that his report was retaliatory rather than protective. Mr. Morrison, you testified that you were concerned about your sister's fitness as a mother, Daniel said, holding up a thick folder. Yet these are character references from 12 different professionals who work with children, teachers, pediatricians, school counselors, and social workers. Every single one describes Rachel Morrison as an exemplary mother. How do you explain this discrepancy? Michael's composure cracked slightly. They don't see what happens behind closed doors, he replied, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction, and you do. Despite living in Boston and visiting only occasionally, despite having no training in child development or psychology, despite having no children of your own. Daniel's questions came rapid fire, each one chipping away at Michael's credibility. The turning point came when Judge Morrison requested to speak privately with Emma and Tyler. The children were brought from the courthouse's child interview room, where they had been waiting with a victim advocate, and the judge conducted a gentle but thorough conversation about their feelings and experiences. Through the court reporter's later transcript, I learned that both children had expressed confusion about why they couldn't go home, sadness about being separated from me, and concern about their uncle's recent behavior. Emma, with her 7-year-old honesty, told the judge that Uncle Michael had been asking weird questions about their home life and that she felt scared when he got angry with their mommy. Tyler, barely 5 years old, simply asked when he could sleep in his own bed again and whether his dog Buddy was missing him. Their innocent responses, free from adult coaching or manipulation, provided the most powerful testimony of the entire hearing. When court resumed, Dr. Sarah Chen took the stand as our key witness. She had treated Emma and Tyler since birth and spoke with authority about their physical and emotional well-being under my care. Her testimony was comprehensive and devastating to Michael's case, describing both children as thriving, well-adjusted, and clearly attached to their mother. In 15 years of pediatric practice, Dr. Chen concluded, I have never seen any indication that Rachel Morrison is anything other than a devoted, responsible mother. These children are among the healthiest and happiest in my practice, which speaks directly to the quality of care they receive at home. David's testimony proved equally powerful, despite our complicated history. He acknowledged our marital problems while firmly defending my parenting abilities and expressing horror at Michael's allegations. Rachel and I had our issues as a couple, David admitted, but she has always been an extraordinary mother. These accusations are not just false, they're cruel. Emma and Tyler need to be with their mom, not caught up in this family vendetta. The most emotional moment came when my mother took the stand, tears streaming down her face as she described watching her son destroy her daughter's family through calculated lies and manipulation. "I raised both of my children to value truth and family loyalty," she said, her voice breaking. "What Michael has done betrays everything we taught him. Those grandchildren belong with their mother, not with someone who would use them as weapons in his war for control." Marcus Chen's closing argument attempted to paint me as a master manipulator who had convinced everyone around me to lie on my behalf, but the sheer volume and credibility of witnesses supporting me made this narrative implausible. How could I have orchestrated false testimony from doctors, teachers, neighbors, and even my ex-husband? Daniel's closing was passionate and precise, documenting the timeline of Michael's harassment, the suspicious timing of his allegations, and the obvious coaching of his witnesses. He presented phone records, financial documents showing Michael's payments to Patricia's son, and expert testimony about parental alienation tactics. "Your Honor," Daniel concluded, "this case represents a textbook example of malicious litigation designed to punish a mother for asserting her independence and refusing to submit to her brother's control. Emma and Tyler Morrison are not in danger from their mother, they are in danger from an uncle who views them as possessions to be won rather than children to be protected." Judge Morrison's deliberation lasted 3 hours, during which I sat in the courthouse hallway with my parents and supporters, trying to maintain hope while preparing for the possibility of losing my children to Michael's lies. The waiting was excruciating, made worse by Michael's confident demeanor as he spoke quietly with his attorney and girlfriend. When court reconvened, Judge Morrison's expression was stern but decisive. She began by addressing the serious nature of false allegations in custody cases and the harm they cause to children and families. Then she delivered the words I had been praying to hear. "After careful consideration of all testimony and evidence presented, this court finds that the allegations against Rachel Morrison are not credible and appear to be motivated by personal animosity rather than genuine concern for child welfare. The emergency custody order is hereby dissolved, and full custody is immediately restored to the children's mother." The relief was overwhelming, but Judge Morrison wasn't finished. She turned her attention to Michael with obvious disapproval, addressing the consequences of his actions. "Morrison, your conduct in this matter has been reprehensible. You have weaponized the legal system, traumatized innocent children, and wasted valuable court resources with fabricated allegations. This court is referring your case to the District Attorney's Office for possible perjury charges, and you are hereby prohibited from any unsupervised contact with these children pending further review." Michael's face went white as the implications of the judge's words sank in. He had not only lost his custody bid, but now faced potential criminal charges for his false testimony. Sarah stood and hurried from the courtroom, apparently unwilling to be associated with the aftermath of his failed scheme. The reunion with Emma and Tyler in the courthouse corridor was the most joyful moment of my life. They ran into my arms with desperate relief, both talking at once about how much they had missed me and how confused they had been about their sudden separation. Tyler clung to my neck like he might never let go, while Emma peppered me with questions about whether they would ever have to leave home again. "Never," I promised them both, meaning it with every fiber of my being. "We're going home, and we're staying together." The drive home was filled with excited chatter from the children about their plans for Halloween costumes, their relief at seeing Buddy again, and their desire to sleep in their own beds. They seemed remarkably resilient, though I knew we would need family therapy to process the trauma of their temporary separation and their uncle's betrayal. The aftermath of the custody hearing brought both justice and healing, though the scars from Michael's attack on our family would take time to fade completely. The district attorney did indeed file perjury charges against Michael, leading to his resignation from his consulting firm and significant damage to his professional reputation. Patricia Webb and Gregory Martinez faced lesser charges for providing false testimony, though both claimed they had been deceived by Michael about the true nature of the case. Michael's attempts to contact me and the children were unsuccessful, blocked by both legal restraining orders and my determination to protect my family from further manipulation. He sent letters through attorneys attempting to justify his actions and request reconciliation, but the damage to our relationship was irreparable. The brother I had loved and trusted no longer existed, replaced by someone willing to destroy innocent lives for the sake of control and power. The healing process was gradual but steady. Emma and Tyler thrived back in their familiar routines, though they occasionally asked questions about why Uncle Michael had tried to take them away from me. I answered honestly but age-appropriately, explaining that sometimes adults make very bad choices that hurt the people they're supposed to love. Family therapy helped all of us process the betrayal and develop strategies for moving forward. Dr. Lisa Wong, our therapist, helped the children understand that the separation wasn't their fault, and that their home with me was permanent and secure. She also helped me work through my own trauma from the experience and develop better boundaries to protect against future manipulation. My relationship with my parents deepened through shared experience of Michael's betrayal. They struggled with guilt over missing warning signs and grief over losing their son to his own destructive choices. But their unwavering support during the crisis strengthened our bond and helped Emma and Tyler feel surrounded by love and protection. 6 months after the hearing, I received news that Michael had been sentenced to 18 months of probation and community service for perjury. The criminal conviction meant he would never be able to work in financial consulting again, effectively ending the career he had built through years of manipulation and calculated ambition. The irony wasn't lost on me that Michael's pursuit of control over my life had ultimately destroyed his own. His inability to accept my independence and autonomy had cost him his job, his reputation, his family relationships, and any future contact with the niece and nephew he claimed to love. Today, 3 years later, Emma and Tyler are thriving 10-year-olds and 8-year-olds who barely remember the trauma of their temporary separation. They have maintained a close relationship with their father David, who remarried Jennifer in a small ceremony where my children served as flower girl and ring bearer. The blended family dynamics aren't always perfect, but they're built on honesty and mutual respect rather than control and manipulation. I continue teaching at the elementary school where I found my calling, though I now also volunteer with organizations that support parents facing false allegations. My experience taught me that the family court system, while generally well-intentioned, can be manipulated by determined liars willing to weaponize children for personal gain. The most important lesson from this nightmare is that family loyalty should never require sacrificing your truth, your children's well-being, or your fundamental rights as a parent. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for protecting the people who depend on you most. Sometimes the most dangerous threats to our families come from within, disguised as concern and wrapped in the language of love. If you've experienced something similar, please know that healing is possible, that truth does eventually prevail, and that the love between parent and child is stronger than any manipulation or legal maneuvering designed to destroy it. Trust your instincts, document everything, and never stop fighting for the children who call you home. 5 years have passed since that terrifying chapter of our lives ended, and I'm writing this from my new home office where I run a nonprofit organization called Family Truth Advocates. What started as my personal nightmare has transformed into a mission to help other parents facing similar attacks on their families. Emma is now 12 and Tyler is 10, both thriving academically and emotionally, with only the faintest memories of their uncle's destructive campaign against us. Last month, I received an unexpected letter from Michael. After years of silence, he reached out from his new life in Oregon, where he works as a warehouse supervisor, his consulting career permanently destroyed by his criminal conviction. The letter was filled with what appeared to be genuine remorse, acknowledging the devastating impact of his actions and expressing regret for the trauma he inflicted on innocent children he claimed to love. I realize now that my need for control destroyed everything I actually cared about, he wrote in careful handwriting. I lost my family, my career, and my self-respect because I couldn't accept that you were capable of making your own decisions. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I understand the magnitude of what I did. Reading his words brought unexpected emotions. Part of me felt validated by his admission of guilt, while another part grieved for the brother I had once known and loved. Emma found me crying in the kitchen after reading the letter and asked if I was sad about Uncle Michael. Her question reminded me how much healing we've all accomplished over these years. Sometimes people we love make choices that hurt us deeply, I explained to her. It's okay to feel sad about losing someone, even when they caused the loss themselves. I chose not to respond to Michael's letter, not out of cruelty, but because some bridges burn too completely to ever rebuild. The trust he shattered when he tried to steal my children could never be restored, regardless of his current remorse. My responsibility is to protect Emma and Tyler, not to absolve Michael of guilt he rightfully carries. The nonprofit work has become deeply fulfilling in ways I never expected. Every month, I receive calls from panicked parents whose lives are being turned upside down by false allegations, malicious custody battles, and systematic campaigns designed to separate them from their children. Through Family Truth Advocates, we provide legal referrals, emotional support, and practical guidance for navigating the complex family court system. Most importantly, we help parents document evidence and build strong defenses before situations spiral out of control. The patterns are remarkably consistent: isolated family members using children as weapons, ex-spouses fabricating abuse allegations for custody advantages, and relatives who weaponize concern to mask their desire for control. Sarah Chen, the pediatrician who testified so powerfully on my behalf, now serves on our advisory board and helps train other medical professionals to recognize the signs of false allegations. Daniel Rodriguez provides pro bono legal services for our most desperate cases, and even David contributes by sharing his perspective as a father who witnessed false accusations against his children's mother. The organization has helped reunite over 200 families in 5 years, with a success rate that amazes even our most optimistic supporters. Each victory feels personal, each reunion reminds me why surviving my own ordeal was worth the pain and struggle. Emma and Tyler have grown into remarkable young people who understand the value of truth and family loyalty in ways that many adults never learn. They've participated in some of our awareness events, sharing their experiences with age-appropriate honesty about what it feels like when family members betray trust and weaponize love. Their resilience continues to inspire my work and remind me that children are far stronger than we often give them credit for. They've maintained healthy relationships with their father David and stepmother Jennifer, proving that blended families can thrive when built on honesty rather than manipulation. My parents, now in their 70s, have become my most dedicated volunteers, stuffing envelopes and making phone calls for the organization while providing constant childcare support that allows me to travel for speaking engagements. Dad often says that Michael's betrayal taught him to value the family members who choose love over control, connection over dominance. We raised one child who understood that love means letting go, he reflected during our recent family dinner, and one who believed love meant holding tight. The difference destroyed one of them and freed the other. Mom has found peace through forgiveness work with our church, though she maintains clear boundaries about Michael's absence from our lives. She occasionally sends him photos of Emma and Tyler through mutual relatives, but she respects my decision to maintain no direct contact for the children's protection. The legal consequences for Michael extended beyond his criminal conviction. His professional reputation was so damaged that he was forced to relocate across the country and start over in a completely different field. The financial impact of legal fees, lost income, and civil penalties effectively reset his life to zero, teaching him that destroying others ultimately destroys oneself. Patricia Webb and Gregory Martinez both faced social consequences in our small community, where their false testimony became widely known after local news coverage of the case. Patricia's son lost his job at Michael's firm when the truth emerged, creating family tensions that mirror the damage Michael inflicted on our own relationships. The experience taught me that evil rarely announces itself dramatically, but instead creeps in through small compromises, gradual boundary violations, and the weaponization of love and loyalty. Michael's campaign against my family succeeded as long as it did because good people struggle to believe that someone could be calculating enough to destroy children's lives for personal gain. Recovery required rebuilding my ability to trust my own judgment, something that systematic gaslighting had seriously damaged. Through therapy and the support of genuine allies, I learned to distinguish between authentic concern and manipulative control, between healthy family involvement and dangerous intrusion. Today, I can honestly say that Michael's attack on our family, while traumatic, ultimately made us stronger and more connected. Emma and Tyler learned early that they can survive betrayal and that their mother will fight fiercely to protect them. They've seen justice prevail and truth triumph, lessons that will serve them well throughout their lives. The most profound transformation has been my understanding of forgiveness. I don't forgive Michael for his actions because forgiveness requires the possibility of restored relationship, and that will never be safe for my children. But I've released the anger and resentment that once consumed me, choosing instead to channel that energy into helping other families survive similar attacks. My final message to anyone facing false allegations or family betrayal is simple but hard one: trust your instincts, document everything, seek professional help immediately, and never stop fighting for your children. The legal system isn't perfect, but truth has a power that lies cannot ultimately overcome. Family loyalty should never require sacrificing your children's well-being or accepting abuse disguised as concern. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is establish permanent boundaries that protect the innocent from those who would harm them, even when those harmful people share your blood. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.